Welcome to Ripstop on the Record, the podcast for makers, by makers, where we talk about all things MYOG. Brought to you by Ripstop by the Roll. I think it's good, right?
Yeah, I think that was a good take.
Welcome back to another episode of Ripstop on the Record. I'm Avery. Jameson was out for this recording, so I'll be holding it down solo. In this conversation, we invited Chase from Utah State University to discuss the Outdoor Product Design and Development Program. This program offers a unique curriculum that focuses on designing and developing outdoor products, where students have the opportunity to specialize in different areas such as performance apparel, soft goods, accessories, or equipment. We'll talk about the curriculum that's offered, senior projects, the cost of tuition, job placements, and the impact of the program on gear and the industry itself. I do have one announcement for you all, and this one is very exciting. We will be having a Dyneema overstock sale starting on Thursday, March 14th and ending on Thursday, March 28th. You'll receive 15% off a few different Dyneema variants, which include 0.51 ounce, 0.67 ounce, and 2.92 ounce Dyneema. You can also receive 10% off full rolls of those variants of Dyneema, and it does not include outdoor ink. As always, head on over to our YouTube if you'd like to watch this episode or any other episodes of Ripstop on the Record. Feel free to send us an email or an Instagram message letting us know any ideas, comments, questions, concerns you have about the podcast, and if you have any ideas for future episodes. We're always looking to provide you the content that you want to hear, and it helps us when you send us suggestions. So if you have any ideas, send them in, and let's get on to the episode. Hey, Chase, welcome to the podcast. I'm super excited to have you on.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me. Love what you all are doing.
Yeah, of course. We have been following Utah State University for quite some time now. We have a past maker sponsor, Tanner, who went through your program, and we're excited to dive in and learn more about Utah State University and about what the program does. But before we start all of that, tell us what it is that you do.
I do a lot of different things here at the university. It's kind of a non-traditional type role for a university program, but I do all of our industry outreach and marketing for the Outdoor Product Design and Development Program, which is our 4-year bachelor's degree program here at the university. So my primary role is to help build ties to industry and help prepare our students to be qualified for those positions, and to generally just promote the program so that, prospective students know about the opportunities to break into this industry, and hiring managers and the companies that our students want to work for know about our students before they submit that resume. We want all these great outdoor companies to know about our program so they're familiar with what our students are qualified to do. And that's part of what I do. I'm kind of the first line of defense in that way, just leading the charge and promoting the program and advocating for our students.
I love that. I know that you have been in contact before. So how many years have you been at Utah State University now?
Well, the program's been around since 2015, and I started working in January of 17. So we didn't have a graduating class at the time. And since then, we've had 5 graduating classes, a growing alumni network, and it's kind of fun. We're in a position now where the program's evolved a lot over the years, and our alumni are out doing great things. And we're to the point now where we have alumni that have been working out, long enough in the industry that they're hiring some of our recent graduates for their design teams. So it's kind of coming full circle, and our students are taking over, which is exciting to see.
Yes, I'm excited to talk about all of that. I know that we have a few of those questions built in, so we'll get to that. But can you tell us about what it is at Utah State University, the Outdoor Product Design and Development Program offers?
Yeah, absolutely. The program is really first of its kind. I mean, credit to the faculty member, Lindsay Shirley, who was here, prior to the program starting in 2015, like had this idea to create a program that was focused on outdoor and designing and developing outdoor products. She worked closely with the industry to understand the needs at the time. And this was at the heyday of like outdoor retailer in Salt Lake, and just a lot of industry, a lot of opportunities, like a lot of excitement around the industry just in general. And there was no program at the time that was really doing this work at the undergraduate level. There's lots of design programs, lots of apparel degrees, lots of industrial design programs, but there was nothing specifically addressing the needs of our sports and outdoor related companies. And so that was really where the program originated, was trying to create opportunities and pipelines for students who want to work in the outdoor space, specifically working with product, to have that opportunity. So at our core, it's a product design program focused on sport and the outdoors. That's not to say students can't find opportunities to work in other industries. The skill sets are really transferable. At the core, our students learn how to design and develop consumer products. And there's a few different pathways for how to do that and what types of products, but students can focus in on performance apparel, more soft goods, accessories, or more the equipment side of things. So we kind of see ourselves as like a hybrid apparel design and industrial design program in that way, where we offer some different pathways. And then for students who are interested in product but don't necessarily want to be the designer, there's more of the, there's additional roles on product teams. There's typically a designer, a product developer, and then a product manager or merchandiser. And so we have some other pathways so the student can get an emphasis in one of those other two areas. So it's not just, for students who want to design product, but students who want to be involved in the whole development process and sale of product. So a lot of different opportunities, but it's a very hands-on, everything from sketching and ideation, that initial conceptual phase of designing a product, to all of the market and user research to understand what problems to solve, to the digital design, 3D design, and then a lot of hands-on prototyping, which I know will be interesting for your audience in particular. Students get that opportunity to jump into the sewing lab and learn how to pattern and sew product together, different construction techniques. And for more of the hard goods students, they get that experience, but with metals, plastics, and composites. So in our woods class, the students actually learn how to press a skateboard, press a ski, press a snowboard. Like there's opportunities to do that same kind of prototyping that you'd see on the soft goods side, but in the hard goods area. So there's a lot of information, but hopefully a good overview of the different opportunities within the program.
Yeah, you just gave me a lot to think about. I think I had 3 questions pop in my head that I just wrote down for later to go over with you. My brain is like firing on all engines right now. You did mention one thing about kind of the mindset of the students, and I think that's a great place to go. So obviously, being in this type of industry requires, a really unique and creative mindset. How does the program kind of cultivate a maker's mindset among its students, or is it something that they kind of already have coming into the program?
It's probably a mix. Like I feel like we get students who come into the program who don't realize how creative they really are. But then we certainly come in, we have students coming in with like, they're always making stuff. Their hands are always busy. They're always working on some, a hobby or some creative outlet. So it's definitely a mix. But I feel like all of our students are capable of it. I think, and everyone is capable of like creativity. I believe we all have like curiosity within us. And I feel like life kind of tamps that down. And in some ways we're discouraged from being creative and curious. And at the root of creativity, right, is curiosity, I feel like. And so I think we try to do our best to foster that curiosity within our students by giving them a lot of different opportunities to make with different mediums, right? So I don't feel like there's one technical skill that the students have to walk away with from the program. We want to expose them to a lot of different ways of creating and making products. So, all of the students take a sketching class, like paper and pencil is where they all start. All of them will spend time using digital tools and 3D tools. All of them will learn how to prototype in some form, whether that's using cardboard and duct tape to make a low fidelity prototype, or actually sitting in this, behind a sewing machine or in the Woods lab and making up a product. But I think the important thing is encouraging these students to just develop a love for the process and a love of making and a love of creativity, and not focusing so much on like, you need this specific tool, because tools will change, software changes, like skill sets change. But if a student goes into a company or is working, making product, like if they have curiosity and creativity, they're going to be curious around new processes, new tools. They can learn a new software. They can learn how to do a new stitch that they didn't previously. So I think the focus is like, let's expose them to a lot of different tools and a lot of different types of making, and foster some of that curiosity.
Man, I love that too. I think it's really relatable for me, obviously, hosting the podcast, but I think it'll be relatable to a lot of our listeners as well. One thing you said is, having that curiosity, but also not being so comfortable all the time with the tools that you have and looking for other ways to solve problems. And to me, I think that's one of the most fun parts about DIYing and making your own gear, is that there is no right or wrong solution. And sometimes the most fun solutions are the ones that are most creative and that have an uncommon use, or an uncommon, that it doesn't go with that product, but it goes with it somehow, And I think that's such a beautiful thing. I can only imagine what a day in the life of a student is like at the university, and just being around all those creative people. I mean, that's one thing for me that I personally miss about going to college and going to university. And it is a little bit different depending on what you're majoring in, obviously, but I went to art school. So there's a lot of that collaboration and feedback. If you go to school for science or mathematics, it might be a little bit different, but it is such a creative field, and having that creative energy around you really allows you to like expound on your ideas and bounce things off of each other. So I think that's such a valuable thing that kind of goes along with everything that you said. Let's get into a little bit of the curriculum. So I know people are going to be curious about like, well, what do classes look like for a student who is going through this program? I'm sure, like you said, there's lots of different routes that you can go. So maybe just highlighting some of the unique, or, some of the classes that everyone goes through. Like you said, everyone takes a sketching class, but I'm curious to know.
Yeah, the first 2 years are largely the same for most of the students. There's kind of a core that all of the students have to take, whether they're more interested in design, development, or product management. All of that is building up to a portfolio review process in between year 2 and 3. And that's typical of a lot of design programs, where you put together a portfolio and you formally apply to advance into the upper division courses, the final 2 years. And that's where that split occurs, is in the final 2 years. That's where you branch off into either design development or product management. And there's still some shared classes between some of those students. But yeah, the first 2 years, it's all about like the first class that the students take is Intro to Product Creation. And that's a large lecture class. There's over 100 students in that every year who are exploring the degree program. And that's an opportunity for students to learn, like, how does a product go from idea to being on the shelf? And what are all the different hands that are a part of that process? From product management, coming up with the design brief, to design, doing all the conceptualization, and then handing off to development to actually go and work with factories to produce the product. And then, of course, there's so many other hands that are involved. But so that's kind of the first class. And then there's kind of a mix of like theory classes. So, you're going to take a fundamentals of design class to learn about good principles of design, just across the board in product, in life, in lots of different industries. So a good theory of design, like foundations. And then there's a lot of those hands-on courses. So I like to call those like our visual communications classes. So, because at the core of the program is focused on training problem solvers, creative thinkers, and visual communicators, right? And sometimes, as a communicator, like you can be limited by the tools that you have. So we want them to be able to practice and develop different ways to communicate ideas and solutions to problems that they've identified through a lot of different classes. So sketching is the one that we've talked about. It's all of us, most of us, I think the majority like have drawn something in our lives, right? And it's very inexpensive. Everyone typically has access to pencil paper. It's like a very inexpensive tool, and you can quickly like put ideas on paper. That's still like the backbone of the program. You'll take a digital design class where you start to learn how to, translate some of these ideas using digital tools, Photoshop, Illustrator. And then there's some additional 3D classes. So learning how to design things using SolidWorks and CAD, or, making photorealistic renderings using tools like Keyshot and Rhino. And then, of course, the hands-on courses. So in the first 2 years, you can kind of pick and choose. We know not everyone wants to design with textiles, and not everyone wants to design with metal or wood. And so we actually let the students pick 2 of 4 kind of maker classes. So they can take, the 2 sewing courses, which is a sewing and then a patterning course, or they can take wood-based manufacturing and materials processing, which is more metals and plastics. Or they can take, a mix of those 4. But the idea is that we want to give them some exposure to that hands-on making and prototyping as well, because as designers and people working in product, we also want them, to have that ability to prototype, but then also, maybe at the role that they're in at a company, maybe they don't have access to a sewing machine, but we want them to be able to empathize and understand when they put something on paper and send it to a factory, real people actually have to translate that idea into a prototype. And so, understanding when you draw something, if it's even feasible and manufacturable, is really important. So that's kind of the first 2 years. They put together a portfolio, they apply, if they're admitted, they're split into those 3 different tracks. And then in those upper division courses, we actually have a combined class with all 3 emphasis areas where they take a class called design thinking. And it's a really intense project-based class where they work in teams and learn the design process, like how to identify problems and then how to present solutions. And we actually partner with NASA on that every year, and a company where NASA provides us access, at least information, to some of their innovative tool or technologies and materials that they've developed. And then typically a company is our sponsor that semester as well. And in the past, we've had Checker Spot, Under Armour, Solomon. The students basically have to identify a problem, take that technology, and then identify the white space within the brand's portfolio, and then present a solution or a product that can fit the portfolio.
So that's what they're doing the last 2 years.
They do that one semester.
Just
so that's
one semester. Wow.
Yep. So it's pretty intense. It's pretty stressful, but the students walk away feeling like they understand like how to kind of identify problems and then present solutions. That's kind of the core of the class. And they get a really good experience like presenting to, design leaders and people from NASA. And then from there, the rest of the 2 years, there's some elective based courses. There's a footwear class, there's a gear class, there's the design students have their design studios. So those are project-based courses as well, where this semester, our junior design students have been given 3 design briefs, one that was provided by Black Diamond. And the students have 3 weeks each to design something for that design brief and then present it. And they'll be presenting to Black Diamond this semester. And then all of that between design development, product management, it all cultivates it all leads up to a senior exhibit. So in the senior year, they all put together a capstone project that they present to industry. And so that's actually happening April 23rd and April 27th, one in Logan and one in Salt Lake, where the students are actually going to be presenting their capstone projects to the industry. So it is all kind of leading up to them, creating a product line and then presenting that to the industry.
Nice. I was going to ask about that. So for their capstone project, that's what they're doing. They're making a product line. What kind of are the requirements that go into that? When I think product line, it's like, I watch a lot of Project Runway. So their final runway show is like 14 pieces. Like, what are we looking at? What's kind of the standard for that project? I'm sure people go above and beyond, but what are the requirements?
Yeah, it definitely varies. If you're more hard goods, typically it's one product. And if it's apparel, it's like a small collection, like 6 pieces. And so, yeah, it does vary a little bit. I've got an example. It's kind of hard to show here, but I've got like a student portfolio.
Nice.
But for her capstone project, she was working on solving like triathlete storage issues.
Okay.
So a lot of triathletes have issues like, with their storage solution on their bike. And so she kind of went through this whole process of trying to figure out like a better way to store all of the equipment, all of the food, all the things that you need to do a triathlon. How do you best store that on the bike? There's current solutions like built-in solutions into the bike frame. There's also modular solutions, but she kept finding through her interviews with users that there were still some pain points. And so her whole project was designing a better storage solution for triathletes. And so she went through the whole process of, user research and sketching and iteration, coming up with concepts and then designed a conceptual solution. Some students, if it's a less intense project than that, they'll actually go to like, prototype and show those at their exhibit. But this was a really robust project and a really good problem to solve. So yeah, they really vary. But the idea is that they're kind of taking these like 4 years to identify like something that only they can solve, right? It's like we want them to basically solve a problem or create something that we really haven't seen before. So that's kind of the focus, is we really want them to identify a problem and then present something new to the industry, not just make something that's already been made before.
Man, that's a really interesting kind of just like thesis or thought behind the whole program. A lot of the times programs are like, this is the subject that you're learning and you're going to spend the 4 years on it. And at the end, you're going to write a book or,
right.
or whatever.
Well,
but
for us, like, it's like we could just require them to be really good at like technical skills and say, make this backpack. But at the end of the day, like, we don't necessarily need more backpacks, right? It's like we need people who can solve the problems that our industry faces.
Right.
And so it's more about like, all of the tools are in service of helping them become better at like identifying problems and then presenting solutions. And so that's ultimately what we want them to be able to walk away with, is an understanding of how to do those things, identify problems, present solutions in a compelling way.
Right. I think that kind of leads me into my next question. You're talking about solving problems, and it's like, there's always going to be more problems and as things change and evolve. So as the outdoor gear is kind of constantly evolving and changing, how does a program stay ahead of the curve in terms of emerging technologies or materials or programs, even design trends within the industry? What does that look like?
I think that's like a constant conversation. And I feel like I used to be so worried about, do we have the latest and greatest software? Do we have the latest and greatest in prototyping tools? And I think going back to that idea of like, are we training students to be really good at using tools, or are we training them to be good at solving problems? And like, it's trying to figure out like, how much do they like need to know how to use a seam, a seam taper, right? Or do they just need to understand the process of seam taping?
Right.
Like, so there's a little bit of that, like how much do they actually need to be able to do the technical work versus just having an awareness and an understanding. So we kind of always go back and forth on that. Materials is always big. Like we work pretty closely with some with Functional Fabric Fair. It's a great trade show. If your listeners attend one show, like Fabric Fair is the one to go to, because they always have the latest. They do 2 shows in Portland every spring and fall, and then they do one in New York. The New York one's definitely more fashion, but they still, it's still a performance focus. But the attendees at the Portland show, it's all the Nike, Adidas, Lulu, Arc'teryx designers go to find the latest and greatest fabrics. So we attend that show, and we typically bring back like swatches from all these mills that are developing new functional fabrics. So, more than like giving students, and like bringing in really expensive equipment here and always trying to keep up with the latest and greatest in equipment. Like I almost feel like just bringing in the latest in materials and at least giving them an exposure is more manageable for us. And I think it's really beneficial for them. Same with software, right? Software is always going to change. But if they understand the basics of, okay, here's how to sketch a product in 2D, and then here's how to think about designing something in 3D, and learning the basics of like a SolidWorks, which isn't really going anywhere. As new 3D tools arise, like this is an oversimplification, but at that point it's learning like where are the buttons, right? Like with a new software, in some ways. And so, I think it's almost been a relief that we don't feel like we always have to be bringing in the latest software. It's more about like principles. Like, let's teach you good principles and teach you how to be a curious person, because as soon as you go out into the industry, things are going to change, and you're going to have to learn some new software that the company uses that you didn't learn in school. That's going to happen. And so it's more about, can you learn how to learn? That I think is really key.
Wow. I really love that. I have to say that when I came into this conversation, I was originally thinking that the program was more along the lines of like a traditional fashion program where you have a patterning class, and then you have, different types of sewing classes or designing classes, and you're just making another line, or you're just, like you said, we don't need more backpacks. Like you're teaching them how to solve these problems. And that's honestly something that I wasn't expecting coming into this. I was just thinking, we're learning how to sew, and you're going to make another hiking line or another bag line or another whatever. So I think that's really fascinating. I'm also extremely jealous that, I'm not saying that it's never too late to go back to school, because it's not, but I'm kind of like locked in here. But I wish I would have known that that was an option. And I think too, it's also very regional. I mean, I grew up in Georgia, and there is not a lot of talk around outdoor recreation programs or doing that for college. And I didn't know until, I went off in the world. And even after that, didn't know, because your college only offers certain things. And I think that's really great that you're teaching them how to be more curious minded, other than just teaching them the basics of outdoor gear and, the proper skill set that one might learn in a program like that.
And that's not to say we don't have the maker classes. Like we have our fair share of maker classes. I don't want to downplay that at all.
Yeah.
We have the pattern, like the multiple patterning classes. And if you want to learn how to 3D pattern, and if you want to, like, we just are adding in an advanced, so we have our wood-based manufacturing course where they get an exposure to like making a skateboard. We're adding in the fall, like a dedicated class to do board making. Cool. So like making is of course like a core of what we do. But it's all in the service of like, why am I learning these tools? What do these tools allow me to do to make me a better problem solver and a better communicator of ideas? So it's all in service of that.
I would imagine that with the level of creativity and collaboration that, the makers have, and also just the program has, and the directors like yourself, I can just imagine that you guys take your students' feedback into consideration, that if people are really interested in making boards and skateboards, that if there's enough demand that you're building that out for them. Is that kind of ringing true?
I think so. I mean, I think, I think we look at our program as a product, right? And like
Yeah.
in design, you iterate on ideas, and you look at companies, right? Like they'll design a product line, and next season you'll see adjustments and tweaks to it, right? Like they're refining the product, even though, they launched something this season. Next season, they'll come out with the things, the same product, but maybe with some slight adjustments. Like we're all refining products, people, programs. Like I think of it that way. And we have to be responsive to the needs of the industry and the interests of our students too. So we have an advisory board, which we love. They meet every April with us at our senior exhibit. So again, April 23rd. And the board comes together and we share with them what happened this last year. And this year, they're going to have the opportunity to conduct exit interviews with our students and hear directly from our students what their experience was in the program. And then we'll sit down with the board and they'll give us feedback on what they're seeing from an industry perspective, what the students are saying, and then we'll make adjustments the next year. So, it's through those conversations that you get a dedicated board making class, right? Or you get a footwear class,
Awesome.
or we make tweaks within the curriculum to adjust to industry needs. So universities are notoriously slow, but I feel like within the university, I think we're pretty fast in terms of wanting to be responsive, because at the end of the day, this program was created to help solve those industry problems and create that pipeline that didn't exist before. So we feel the need to be really tied in with industry and responsive in that way.
That kind of leads me into the next question in terms of just the overarching industry and kind of management of the program in general and usage of materials. So obviously sustainability has been a hot topic for a while, but it's becoming even more and more conscious in the fabric community for great reasons. How does the program and the university kind of address that issue and maybe incorporate sustainable practices into either the creation of gear or into the program itself?
Yeah, this has been something that our board particularly challenged us on in all the best ways. And I feel like we've responded. There's more to do, but I feel like we've made some really good adjustments in the last couple of years, especially. I think it was 2 years ago, we started a class called Sustainable Design and Operations. And that's a core class. Every student in the program takes it. And it's at its core, it's all about talking about these difficult issues around sustainability, the big challenges that our industry faces. And we bring in sustainability leaders like Kevin Mayette at Blue Sign, and people like, Jameis Taylor at Greater Goods, who's a maker and upcycling and using that as a solution. And sustainability leaders, people who work for different companies on the corporate social responsibility side of things. And that class is all about, kind of challenging the students and presenting to them the problems. And it's more of a lecture-based class. It's less making, but it's more of an opportunity to have some of these big conversations and get the students thinking about how to apply solutions in their other classes, regarding some of these bigger problems. And it's not just that one class. Like when we explored adding this course, we felt like it wasn't enough to just have one class where you talk about sustainability. That's not enough. And so in our program learning outcomes, so like, when a program, we have to justify why we teach what we do, and we have to be graded on the way that we're delivering the curriculum, and are we being effective, and what are the core things that we want students to learn graduating from this program. Sustainability is number one, right? And then that problem solving, communication. But we wanted to have a learning outcome in every single course related to sustainability. Like sustainability has to be talked about in every class. And so I'm starting to see that now when students are designing a project or a product, and they're presenting in a class, there's always a sustainability story and component. It has to be addressed in all of the work that our students do. If it's not being addressed, we're falling short. And so my hope is that this semester at Exhibit, if you ask any student about, their project, there's at least going to be some thought put behind the sustainability component or the impacts that this product is going to have. And some of that is going to be more robust than others. We have some students who are getting really into traceability and that transparency side of the supply chain. And we've had access to the Higg Index. And so we've had students who have actually started to learn the Higg Index tool to be able to track, the water usage of their product and the carbon impact. And that's a really powerful tool. One of our students, was dabbling in that tool during his time in the program, and he got an internship at Outdoor Research in Seattle. And I know that because he spent time learning that tool and because he was just ultra passionate about that work, he's now working as a sustainability analyst in the industry. And so that's another kind of interesting pathway and I think a lot of our students don't know about that until they get into the program is you can do design, but there's so many other roles, adjacent to product where you can have real impacts. And the sustainability analyst position is really interesting. And I just think we're going to see more of those types of jobs popping up in the future.
Well, I think that's really important because, the students who are in the program are going off and getting jobs in the industry, and they're the ones that are going to be the people who are making these changes. So the fact that it's starting at the university level and not, top down from a CEO like Patagonia or whatever, that it's going to make a bigger and broader impact. I had one question that popped up in my head. I feel like in every program or, whatever you're majoring in, there's a book or, in quotes, a Bible that people will refer to in the program. Is there something akin to that at the outdoor program that you guys are always referring to, or that's kind of like the mandatory book that people have in their repertoire when they join?
Yeah.
Cool. Let's see it.
Let me find a couple. Hold on. So I think the first one is Cradle to Cradle. Cradle to Cradle is a book that I think the students all read that book their first semester. They all read it in Intro to Product Creation. And that's this idea of circular economy, the circular economy, how do you take raw material, create a product, and then take those materials and then keep them in the cycle longer. So we're not, just consuming. And so Cradle to Cradle is number one. That one's key. And it's a pretty easy read. I think you can just buy it anywhere. It's been out for a few years, so you can get used copies too. I bought a really cheap used copy out there. So that one's really key. Design of Everyday Things.
Nice.
Is from Don Norman. This is a great one just about how to identify problems and kind of just, it's a core industrial design kind of book.
Yeah.
But a really, really good one. He has a follow-up to that book, which I haven't read yet. So I'm recommending something I haven't read, but Design for a Better World. So this is kind of his follow-up to his initial book. And it's meaningful, sustainable, humanity-centered design for a better world. So the idea is taking what he talked about in his first book, but going more in depth into sustainability. And then, of course, Yvonne's got to be in there somewhere.
Nice.
This is the new version of the future. So there was the Responsible Company. And then this is kind of a new version of that book that came out for the 50th anniversary of the company, called The Future of the Responsible Company. So just a really nice manifesto type book from Patagonia. So I think there's 4 there that I think are really, I hope that our students walk away with these on their bookshelves still. They've impacted me, and I just think they're powerful for anyone to read.
You shared earlier a senior project of the triathlon problem solving bag. Are there any other standout projects or stories from students, senior projects, etc., that come to mind?
Yeah, I mean, there's one from this year that I think is going to be really strong. And it's from one of our seniors. She's doing an upcycle collection, and it's like 8 pieces, and it's all like completely upcycled, apparel pieces.
Cool.
That's going to be really strong. I think that one's going to be really good. I mean, we've like just had so many different types of projects. Like you have this very conceptual, like
Right.
triathlon project, but we had another student who just went through the process of like designing and developing a new bike frame. And he actually like welded up the frame and brought the whole
Wow.
frame and the jigs and everything that he used to weld the thing together. And he just brought that to the exhibit. Um, One of our other graduates. Oh, this one's really strong. Jack Dorrance. He graduated last year, and he did a full like wool or natural material based trail running kit from like feet to the hat
Whoa.
and sunglasses, like everything, and like running vest. Like he did everything. So it was a complete
Wow.
collection. And the idea was using some more natural materials. And the patterning was super intricate, and it was like designed specifically for male and female bodies. And so the patterning was different because the heat transfer is different
Mm.
for different body types. And so he had a female mannequin and designed around like uh, that mannequin specifically and patterned it specifically for like heat transfer for that body. So that one was really, really strong too. And he's doing
Wow.
some really cool things in the industry too.
That's great. I know that you mentioned there's the final show or exhibit is coming up. There's 2 different locations. Is this open to the public?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Great.
we'd love the public to be there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a chance to just get a glimpse into what the students have been doing and celebrate their work. And if you're a company, it's a great opportunity to find some new talent. But it's a fun opportunity to just see what the students have been working on. I'll actually just include the link to that in the chat
Great.
for you.
And I'll
But
make
yeah,
sure to put that in the show notes because I know
that'd be
that we
great.
have a lot of makers and a lot of listeners in Utah. So I'm hoping that some of you guys can
Yeah.
and gals can make it out and visit because that's just, it's cool to see. It's cool to see what others are doing. And it's cool to see what the future, the next generation that's coming into the
Yeah.
workforce is doing. So
It's a great opportunity for prospective students too. So if there's any young makers out there, or, any parents who are makers who have kids who are kind of growing up into this
yes.
space, like, it's a great opportunity to come out and talk to the students and see what they're making and see if this program's a good fit for them. So I'll be there. Our faculty will be there. It's a great chance to just learn a little bit more about the program. So we have the Logan event that's here on campus, but we also did the Salt Lake event at Petzl America's headquarters in Salt
Wow.
Lake, just to be a little closer along the Wasatch Front. Logan's about an hour and a half north of Salt Lake. So we
Okay.
wanted to have the 2 events just to create more opportunities for people to see the work.
Great. I feel like my next question might be a little rude. I feel like it's rude to ask about money, but then my listeners might be like, it's rude that you didn't ask. So what does cost look like for tuition? Maybe if you know off the top of your head, it's okay if you don't. I know there's a difference obviously for in-state and out of state, but yeah, if you happen to know, that'd be neat.
It depends on how many credit hours you're taking too. So like if you're full-time, so 12 to 18 credits, the cost for residents a semester is $3,600.
Okay.
And then let's see, and then plus fees. So it looks
Right.
like you're another few $100s there. And then non-resident tuition is going to be like closer to 12.
All right. Okay.
So are out of state, but there's opportunities. I mean, and this is something we've kind of explored recently. We actually, we have some partnerships with some local, like our tech college and our community college. And so we have a tech college here that teaches some similar classes to us. And so I've actually recommended, some of our out of state students, if you want to get that first year of residency, maybe go to the tech college and like take some of the classes there and then transfer the credits up once you have residency. So, there's some opportunities there if you're coming from out of state and that's an issue. So, there's some opportunities.
Cool. Well, let's move a little bit into the post-grad side of things. I know that we follow your Instagram. If you're listening and you don't follow their Instagram, you should, and we can drop those links and talk a little bit more about that at the end. But you share your graduates, their job placements, which is really freaking cool. And they all end up at some, very recognizable brands and places. So how do you go about job placements? Because it seems like, if you're going through this program, you're bound to get a really decent job.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities and a lot that I didn't expect. So for example, like, again, I mentioned this at the top of the conversation that like the skill sets in our program are very transferable. Like if you want to design any type of consumer product, if you want to do furniture, if you want to do like lifestyle clothing, like the skills that you'll learn here in the program are transferable. So if you feel like, oh, outdoor, is that like limiting to have outdoor product design on my resume? No, because at the end of the day, like it's your portfolio, it's what you make. And like, if your degree happens to say outdoor and you're applying for a position that's not outdoor related, they're going to look at your work. So we've had like one of our graduates recently, like he's working for HP and he's designing printers, okay. And that's traditionally a very industrial design type role, where you'd go through an ID school and get that kind of a position. But he has a very strong like sketching and 3D skill set. And again, the problem solving, that he was a great fit. And so we have more and more students getting jobs outside of the industry. Like that's not something I really expected.
Interesting.
But I think it's cool because not everyone wants to go that pathway. And it's nice to be able to, have options. So, I mean, some of the standouts, for us, like in terms of like success stories, like Under Armour is a big employer of ours. And what's fun about that is like one of our graduates from the first graduating class, like he started working there in Baltimore and is working on one of their apparel teams. And 2 years ago, someone from our graduating class applied for a position on his team and he hired that graduate from our program. So it's really cool. We're getting to that point where it's snowballing. Our graduates are out there. Our alumni are looking out for each other. Under Armour has been a big employer for us. Black Diamond has been really big, especially recently. Actually, this, the student that did the triathlon project, she interned for Black Diamond, was like our first intern at the one of our first interns from the program that was at the company, and kind of really broke the doors open for us to start working with them. Like she proved that our students could hang and do well there, and she's crushing it. She's a huge climber, and she wanted to design climbing equipment. That was always the goal. And now she's on the climb team, or the industrial design team, doing a lot of climbing products. So she's just absolutely crushing it. And we've since had another student who's been working there on the apparel team. But I mean, the list just goes on and on. Like Cotopaxi has a number of our graduates. Cool in Salt Lake has a few. LL Bean, Eddie Bauer, New Balance was not a company that was like, I know New Balance, of course, but it wasn't a company we'd built a relationship with. We have a student or a graduate who's now like on their 3D team, designing products in 3D assets. So we've got grads all over the country. We even have a growing contingent that's overseas. So we actually have a study abroad or exchange program where students in the final 2 years can apply to IUT Annecy, or Outdoor Sports Valley, which is an association over there in France. And it's a school similar to ours. It requires 2 years of design education. But once you're accepted, you spend a year there studying sports product design. I think they have a sales marketing emphasis, and I think they have a textiles emphasis too, but it's all focused on sport. And we have 5 students that have done the program, 2 that are over there currently. And the 2 that are there currently have loved their experience, and they've since gotten internships in the region. So Both of them are working in France right now as interns for the summer. And one, she's actually an intern at Solomon. So she just got an internship at Solomon headquarters, which is right next to the university. So that partnership has kind of opened up the world, or at least opened up Europe to us, because once the students are going to school there, there's some more opportunities to work. So I mean, the sky's the limit. There's all sorts of amazing opportunities for students.
Nice. So the next question, this is probably my last question, and it came up when you kicked us off earlier. So it wasn't on the outline, so I might catch you off guard a little bit here, but I think you got it. If this program was around back in the day, how do you think gear would be different today?
Back in the day, like the 70s, like
I mean, it seems like even this even this program has only been around, you said, since 2015.
2015, yeah.
2015. So like, even if it was back in the day in the 2000s, like, how do you think gear would be different today?
That's a tough one.
I hit you with the hard question at the end.
I don't know. It's kind of like it probably couldn't have gone any other way, right? Because like if this started in the 70s, you have more people getting into the industry with like formal training. And I think part of the beauty of the outdoor industry, it's dirt bags, right? It's like it's Yvonne like just hammering out pitons in the tin shed. I think that's part of the beauty of it was like it was so raw, and it was just purely like users making stuff to, help them go out and climb higher. And so like, I don't know if a program like this maybe would have appealed at the time, right? Like, I feel like I think it's come about at the right time. The industry is also at the point, right, where it's like big enough where like, yeah, you have the Bureau of Economic Analysis that comes out with these economic impact reports that show how, significant, economically the outdoor industry is to the country. And so I don't know if you could have justified a program like this, 20 years ago, because I don't know if people took it as seriously as now it's starting to become this dominant player that people know and respect.
That makes sense.
So I'm avoiding the question a little bit, and that I feel like we just came about at the right time. I think it was right time, right place, honestly.
Yeah. I think, there was no right or wrong answer. And I definitely think that what you're saying makes sense and kind of leads us into the final bit of this. But I know that there's a little bit more to just the program in terms of, just the program being an entity, but you also have some different ways and tools of education and informing people. And one of them does have to do with kind of a little bit of that throwback, that outdoor archive. So can you talk a little bit about that and sharing about what it's like, how people can find it, and what it does?
Twist my arm. I love talking about the archive.
Yes.
It's like my favorite thing. So the archive is pretty amazing, honestly. It was an idea one of our faculty members had in 2017, and he approached our university library, which within the library has a unit called Special Collections and Archives. And most universities have an archives division or department, and and ours in particular has a staff that is, trained to preserve paper, and they have a facility that's purpose built to preserve paper. It's climate controlled, temperature controlled, like the perfect environment to, preserve paper for generations. And typically these collections or like these archives like focus on preserving state, local, regional history, and ours is the same. Like if you go to the archive, the vast majority of the materials are going to be like business records and family histories and things like that related to the region, university history too. But this faculty member kind of pitched them on this idea of creating an archive about the history of gear and the history of the outdoor business. And so I kind of got assigned to the project, And myself and Clint Pumphrey, who's the archivist, one of the archivists there, we just kind of ran with it and started to leverage some of the contacts that I have in the industry, and found some collectors. There was one in particular who gathered over 1,200 catalogs from outdoor companies over the years, like mostly like 60s, 70s, and 80s, like camping, climbing, backpacking companies. About 1,200 catalogs from 200 companies, and he donated them to us. And that really kickstarted this initiative. We started posting the catalog covers on Instagram. We have an Instagram account. It's Outdoor Rec Archive, Outdoor REC Archive. And we just started posting a catalog cover every day, and it blew up. We started getting followers out of London and Paris and Tokyo and New York and LA and all over the world, people who were interested in the outdoor aesthetic. And so we've continued to do that. I've run that account since 2019, and we're pushing 30,000 followers now.
Amazing.
And it's just people who are passionate about the history of the industry and this aesthetic and just the outdoor vibe. And we've since collected over 7,000 catalogs, over 7,000 magazines, and a growing number of unpublished documents. So, for example, the family of Skip Yowell, who started JanSport, his family donated a lot of his photographs and materials related to the early days of JanSport. And we have a really good marmot collection. So one of the designers at Marmot stayed there for 20 or 30 years. When she retired, she had kind of kept everything. She was the unofficial historian, and she literally pulled out sketches from the 80s of apparel and sleeping bags out of the garbage and just preserved them. And so we have a really robust marmot collection that she donated to us. And more. There's so many stories to tell there. Basically, our mission is to create a home for the history of all things outdoor. And it's a public resource. We're a public institution. The idea is that this material is available. It's not all digitized just because the sheer amount of it is prohibitive to do that. But if anyone is in or near or around Logan or in Utah, hour and a half drive from Salt Lake, come visit us. Like, to see the material in person is really amazing. We have a lot of designers who will travel here specifically to do design research, and they'll just spend a day or two with us digging into the collection to get inspired. There's a number of brands that are defunct that you'd never heard of before. And so kind of a treasure trove of lost toys, right? Like that, just companies that if you search online, you'll find no record of them, but just an incredible resource to learn about, some of these brands that are no longer with us. So it's a really amazing tool. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it available digitally other than the Instagram, like a digital catalog?
Not scans, but we'll provide scans upon request. Like, we won't digitize everything in full, but we do 100 scans for 100 pages for free. And then there's a slight charge for every page after that, like 50 cents or something. But there's also, I've given you a link, as well. Sweet. This is kind of our archives. We have an archives page, and each tab goes into our catalog inventory, our magazine inventory, our manuscripts, our photographs. But if you go to the catalog inventory, you can scroll down, and there's a glorified spreadsheet there that is up to date, and you can search by brand and by date, and you can see, all, however many thousands of catalogs. And so that's helpful too. You can look at that and say, hey, could you get me scans of I don't know, Snow Lion 1975 through 1978, and our team can help do that. Or if you're coming to visit us in person, it's always helpful to look at that and then call us ahead of time and say, hey, I'd like to come visit. Can you pull, these companies for me? And our archive staff can do that for you. So
I'm definitely going to link that. I just looked it up and my face was just, I was in awe. I was like, that is, I also majored in photography. So for me, it's I love old pictures, old catalogs, just the mystique of that. It's so fun. And I followed the page, and I just love like the little drawings of people and the cartoon characters, and it's so cute.
There's so much personality in the industry in those days. Like it wasn't as corporate. And so people
Right.
were just doing things, right? It's like taking chances. Like if the magazines are so quirky, like there's one I posted just recently from a company called Banana Equipment, and Banana Equipment was one of the first companies in the 70s to use Gore-Tex for apparel. And it was only around for maybe 5 years. And I actually talked to the founder just recently. She's still alive, in her 70s.
Wow.
Nancy Grimes. She's the best. And again, this is on our page right now, but their logo is a gorilla holding some bananas and a sewing machine. And their slogan is product with appeal. And it's like, you wouldn't see that stuff anymore. You know, it's like, that's only in the 70s.
I don't know.
So
I'm
it's
trying to
just
make
like,
it happen. I love a pun.
well, it's just like, you know, just like quirky, weird companies, right? That like no one knows about Banana Equipment now, but like they were one of the first companies to use Gore-Tex. Like that's crazy.
Wow.
That's wild. And they're not a household name, you know? So there's a lot of stories to learn. Like I'm always happy to talk archives. If anyone wants to reach out, message the Instagram account, you know, or email me. I'm always happy to talk. Like I'm clearly passionate about that stuff. And it's a big part of my job now. It kind of grew into this monster that now we have to deal with, but it's a joy. Like we love it. It's so fun.
Oh, I mean, the last thing I'll say to kind of end this and close us out is like you just mentioning like how there were small brands back in the day, or even like we're today using the word cottage company. It wasn't a thing then, but you know, these small cottage companies that are kind of, they're going by their own set of rules, like Palante packs, like just their imagery and their pictures. It's not this bright white crystal clear outdoor shots in the daytime when it's sunny and 75 degrees. You know, I think that there is something with the smaller companies back then that might have not made it, being very similar to cottage companies now and making the gear that they want to make and doing it their way and not having to follow a set of rules from Arc'teryx or a large company that says, well, this is how we've always done it. But that's just for me, really nice food for thought. I'll be thinking about that for a while, and I'm definitely going to be scanning through this, and I hope you don't get bombarded with tons of requests, but this archive is okay. Sweet. Send it to him. You heard the man. Cool. So to wrap up here, what else is going on at Utah State? How can people find you, follow you, interact with you, and kind of learn more and just follow along the journey?
Oh, we got a lot going on. A lot of plugs here. So we also have our own podcast that I host. It's called the Highlander Podcast. Highlander is kind of an homage to a failed USU mascot that didn't get any traction. But so it's a little homage to our past, but also the outdoors. So Highlander Podcast, we come out with weekly episodes. It's a mix between like guest speakers that are speaking to our classes. So like Casey Jarvis, who's, you know, was the VP of product at Under Armour, you know, spoke to one of our classes. And we record those sessions and we share those with the public. So it's a mix of like present day
immediately.
It's like present day conversations. But then we also do a history of gear series where I interview gear pioneers. So we've interviewed people like Dana Gleason, who started Data Design and Mystery Ranch. You know, people like Jim and Greg Thompson that started Wilderness Experience in the 70s, like a lot of the early North Face designers. I just had on Martin Keene, who started Keene Footwear, and Mark Pagan, who started Chacos. So that's a revolving door of like great outdoor history stories. So Highlander Podcast. And then all the socials, right? So both for the archive, Outdoor Recreation Archive, Outdoor Rec Archive on Instagram, on TikTok, on Pinterest, all the platforms, search Outdoor Rec Archive. And then for the program, It's on Instagram. That's where we're most active, and LinkedIn. But if you search USU Outdoor Product, you'll find us. We post there daily, student work, where our graduates are getting jobs. Really active on LinkedIn too, if that's where you're at. Yeah, just search us on any platform. You'll
Cool.
find us, USU Outdoor Product. So
Awesome. Well, this has been a great conversation. I'm slightly jealous, but you've given me personally a lot of takeaways from this. I'm excited to dive more into the history and to tune in with some of your podcast. And yeah, it's like continuing education. Like I'm getting a free education just from talking to you and all the resources you've given me. So thank you for that. I hope everyone else that's listening feels the same. And yeah, thank you, Chase, for joining us. And I hope we get to chat soon again.
yeah, I hope so too. Thank you for the time, and thanks for all the work that you're doing. Like you're fostering and growing this maker community that's so important to what we do. And just love what you guys are doing too. So it's great to be here and have the conversation.
I'll have to
so thanks again.
I'm gonna sign Kyle up to be a guest speaker. He doesn't know it yet, but I think it would be great for him to come give a talk, because it's all very relatable to everything that you've said, and being curious, and that's just what we're about. And we're never going to settle for, the ordinary, and we're always trying to make things different and make it better than it once was. So that's kind of our motto. But it's been great, and I appreciate it, and we'll talk soon again.
Of course. Yeah, thank you again for the opportunity. Talk
Thanks.
soon.